Hello, Uma.
Hi, Tanya.
It's so wonderful to have you here today. Thank you for taking the time out to just chat with me and chat about your book and your really unique process.
Oh my goodness, it's such a pleasure to be here talking with you about my book, which wouldn't exist if it weren't for you and somatic writing.
Hmm. I don't know if that's true, Uma. I think you may be giving us too much credit, but thank you. And it's been totally an honor to sort of midwife you through this process. And and yours is a unique story and positioning because, as we were just chatting about before we came on here, you already have 3 published books. You're an author. Um, you knew you could write another book, and this story was with you for a long time. So I'd like to ask, um, what was it that, considering those circumstances, drew you to somatic writing?
Well, I have to start at the very beginning, which is the story of how I met you. You and I both know Janet Corner. I've been in her space for many, many years. She's been a guide to me. And when she introduced you in her group that you were going to be teaching, I think it was 3 sessions on somatic
Mhm.
writing, I got very excited because anything to do with the soul and writing is my jam. So, of course, I signed up. And because I live in Europe, I wasn't able to be on the call live. But the following morning, I opened up my laptop, ready to watch the replay. And when your face filled the screen, I just started to cry, and I don't know why. I just started to cry. I was sobbing. I'd never seen you before. I didn't know anything about your work. I just signed up because the idea of somatic writing, which is another form of writing, which I hadn't heard about and didn't know very much about, was exciting. But every time this happens to me, I know there's some deep soul level recognition.
Mhm.
It felt like my soul recognized you, even though I, in this human personality as Uma, didn't know you. My soul knew you. And by the end of that first 60-minute session, I knew I wanted to go deeper with you in somatic writing. And yes, you're absolutely right about the 3 books I've published. But what was hard about writing the book that I eventually did with in the container of somatic writing is that this is the book that terrified me
Mhm.
because it tells the story of our 30-year-old marriage. So it
Mhm.
wasn't just my story, it was the story of my beloved as well. My husband's a very private man, and I just didn't know how to put the story into words. And yet, this book was knocking on the doors of my heart. It's been doing that for many, many years, but I just didn't have the courage to write it. But in that moment of soul recognition, I knew you were going to be the midwife to birth my book. And it was as clear as anything I've ever known. And that's
Mm.
what prompted me to sign up. Yeah.
Which is amazing. And it was like love at first sight, recognition at first sight on both
Yeah.
sides. Because I do remember even you in the group and you missed the sessions, but just your picture and the comments you made, there was such an alignment, like just this warmth there. So you've just finished this first draft. I mean, we're just celebrating that as the cohort came to an end just in the past few weeks. You did such a beautiful job on the book, and you're on the path to manifesting exactly where it needs to go and opening to this particular book story of who the publisher will be and whatnot. Um, it's an amazing thing to have written it and completed it, and you did it in such a cogent, beautiful, literary way. Um, but what I'd love for you to speak about, Uma, is what about the process this year surprised you? What what did you get out of being in somatic writing in our group that maybe change things or open things that perhaps didn't directly have to do with the book, even though, like I always say in the group, it's about your book, but it's about your life and the relationship between the two, right? Because so I'd love to hear your thoughts on, what you're taking away from the process and how perhaps you feel you've been impacted or changed.
Hmm. On so many levels, really, Tanya. So I am a very emotional, sensitive human. I've known that about myself forever. But I didn't know anything about writing from my lungs and writing from my gut and writing from my heart, which is all part of what you teach in somatic writing. I didn't have this cogent awareness that our body holds all our stories and we can access them through writing. So, using your prompts, I was really able to go back in time and access the stories that I hadn't been able to tell, the stories of longing, the stories of desire that we often shame ourselves for because the universe, the world doesn't give us permission to express these stories. We are very quickly told to go to gratitude for what's available in our lives today. And so the stories of what I didn't receive and what I didn't get and what I have such an intense longing for, those stories get shoved, now I know, into the organs of our bodies. So I was
Mhm.
able to unearth so many of these stories and write them. Also, working in the container, I mean, it was such a cozy, beautiful, sacred, intimate container. I was writing the story of intimacy between my husband and I, and the challenges to the dynamic of intimacy in a marriage that travels 3 decades when one person's spiritual path shifts significantly.
Mhm.
What better way to write the story than to be with a group of women, um, all of whom held space for me? To tell the story, to feel into those aspects of the story that was so hard for me, that required me to plumb a new level of vulnerability.
Mhm.
So I find that, the Uma I was when I started writing the book was no longer the Uma I was when I finished the book. That was perhaps the most interesting and profound realization. I had been changed on a very deep level through the process of just writing a first draft. I mean, the draft hasn't been cleaned up, it hasn't been edited, none of that. But just telling the story healed me on such a deep level. And I remember your words and I'll never forget it as long as I live. Write your story, even if it is just for you. You have to write it for yourself first. And I am the living example of that, Tanya. I mean, I
Mhm.
know this book will be out in the world. I feel it, I know it in my bones. But even if this story was written just for me, it has healed me on such a deep level. And that's the magic of somatic writing.
It's so beautifully said, and just the way you integrated that. I so appreciate the um the depth and sincerity with which you worked with that, because having the opportunity to help facilitate you as well as with our other amazing teachers in the process. I saw you working that, and I saw you come up to what felt like some new places around identity, and you didn't resist them. You went into that wrestling kind of with them. And it feels to me that certain aspects of your story broke through and were so potent, and we all could never. I just want to say, like, yours is a page turner, and all of us, your cohort members and Courtney and me and one of our editors, Kristen, who's in there and gives comments, we're all like waiting with bated breath for the next chapter. But it felt like this element of mystery, this element of surprise. It felt to me like things were getting uncovered because you were willing to lean into it and not resist it. And so certain breakthroughs came through, and so we got to experience the surprise as your reader on the other side, and it made it very alive reading your work.
Yeah, I made a promise. I made a commitment to the universe that if I was going to write this book,
Mm-hmm.
I was going to tell the whole unvarnished truth.
Yeah.
And that's so hard to do when you're writing a marriage story because, like I said, it involves the story of your intimate partner.
Mhm.
And so, as you know, I never told him I was writing this book because
Mhm.
I felt that telling him and receiving any kind of reaction that was on the spectrum of even mild negativity would hinder the way I told the story.
Mhm.
I didn't want him sitting on my shoulder, looking at what I was writing. And so I made sure I finished the first draft and then told him I've written the book. That just felt like aligning with my own integrity because I wanted to be able to tell the story with a level of honesty. It's what I always do. It's what I did with my grief memoir, which was
Mhm.
published before this. And the reaction that I get from every reader who comes across my books is, my God, how do you tell the truth in such an intimate way? And I know for myself that when I read authors who don't tell the whole truth, I feel
Mhm.
cheated as a reader. I feel
Totally.
like, yeah, so I don't want to do that to my readers. No.
No, I mean, I really honestly, and I think it's a very, it's wonderful that people can go for self-publishing now, hybrid publishing. There's all different kinds of things. It's amazing to me that we have the possibility of our stories, but sometimes it can breed this kind of shadow of these books that to me, I consider almost vanity books. And they just want the name on the book, not to actually do, because it is profound
Yeah.
and generous work that we do for our reader to actually feel, into the experience and be willing to really meet some very difficult places in ourselves to be able to extract that deeper story, to have, right, not only our story to tell, but a perspective that is valuable to others. And I really
Yes.
felt you do that in this process. And I think that's why the book is so alive and compelling, because you were in it. You allowed yourself
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
show yourself, in that way. And I think that's I know it's such a gift. And it takes some courage.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't know any other way to tell a story. If I tell a story, I will tell it as truthfully as I can and lay bare my soul, because I think that's what every writer connects with. I mean, when a writer reads my story, I want them to see themselves in my story. I want them to say, you've given words to something I felt but didn't know how to express. That's the greatest gift that a writer can offer a reader.
For sure. So, Uma, what's next for you with the book?
So I'm right now editing the manuscript. I have
Mhm.
a printed copy and feels so good to even just hold the printed pages in my hand. And I'm so editing the work. And I plan to write a query letter. And Tanya, I'm a projector for those of
Human
you who know
design.
human design. Yeah, I'm a
We were
projector.
talking
And
about
so
this, yes.
yes, I have to wait for the invitation. It's not for me to initiate or push or force my work onto anybody. My job is to let people know that I exist. And I believe from the many synchronicities that have come my way, the universe has always taken care of the perfect invitations. And I trust that this time too, the perfect agent will find me. And so my job right now is to be in a state of readiness to let people out there know that the book exists, that I exist, that I'm available and open to opportunities. And I let God know every day that I'm available and to use me for the greatest good.
Mm, that's so you, Uma. Really. And I have no doubt. I mean, and you, just like your other three books found their way, and this one's so intimate and personal. And I had said to you, it really feels like you have messages, you have a message for a lot of different kinds of people. Though you wrote to
Mhm.
your one reader, your one, I think you did tell me, a younger version of
Yes.
yourself.
Yeah.
Um, the messages and the story is worthy and broad and wide. So just totally supporting you, Uma, and celebrating in any way in which somatic writing and me, just me and whatever, and the team can support you really in stepping into your author identity this time and allowing it to take you to a place you've never been before. I look forward to having the continued connection to be able to be part of that.
Thank you so much, Tanya. That means a lot. And I just want to say I'm so grateful for you, for Courtney, for Cooper, for Kristen, for all the people I don't know on the team who do such amazing behind the scenes work for somatic writing, that I couldn't have done this work without your support. So I'm eternally grateful for you and your team.
Oh, thank you, Uma. Well, we'll be celebrating with you and continuing to show up in whatever ways we can. We are having this this August retreat, as you know, that I'm very excited about, that I've invited all of your group to, and my former students and other former students and current students around, author's identity. And we're going to be, I feel so excited to do this, and we've decided to add this to the program 4 times a year to Memoir Lab, because there's this whole other world, right? And you've been through it, some people haven't, but of writing the book and then finding, and each book, I always say, every story has its own unique audience, and it's so personal and intimate, but it also has its own unique way into the world. I mean, and I have worked with so many people who, yes, theirs is the traditional way, and they get the, they get the agent and they write the proposal and they walk into a book deal. And some people who just know they're going to do self-publishing or hybrid publishing for various reasons, sometimes because the book comes out much faster. But you and I were talking about stories of magic beforehand, and I was sharing with you how I got a book deal many years ago simply by standing in the ocean, Pacific Ocean in Maui, and putting my hands up to the heavens and calling it in. And 10 days later, having the being asked to getting a publishing deal. So I love you, and you're an amazing teacher. I want to say that too. Like, you're not just an amazing student for me, somebody to work with and support, but your embodied teaching, your very being, offered such a deep teaching back to me and to all of the other members of the cohort. And you just hold such a beautiful, very powerful, very direct, yet very soft something. So I loved having your influence come back on me. And I think that's the synergy and the alchemy of what, it was just a great example of what it's sort of been my dream to create, a kind of container where very individuated and very powerful people can come together and receive and give the best from and with each other. And anyway, it was just a total joy having you in your place in the community. You're irreplaceable, Uma. And
oh, thank you. That feels like such a sacred affirmation, and I'm so grateful to receive it.
well, thank you for chatting with me today, and a big to be continued. And we will be continuing to share with our community when your book comes out and all along the way. So this is the first time we're chatting publicly together, but I know it won't be the last.
I know that too. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you, Uma. Bye.
Bye.